Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Never Did It podcast. I'm Jake Ziegler. I'm here with Brad Garoon. We're going to be talking about a couple of movies from 1955. We can begin with The Lady Killers, which is the film that Brad chose for me this year. Brad, tell me about The Lady Killers.
So I really wanted you to watch this movie because when we were roommates in college, you saw the Coen Brothers version of this movie and you despised it. It took me a long time to see the Coen Brothers version of The Lady Killers because of how much you crapped on it to me. I saw the original adaptation of this movie, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is a bop. I wonder why they had such a hard time with the Coens making this thing, because I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's got Alec Guinness, it's got the Pink Panther, it's got, why am I having a hard time remembering his name?
Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers, thank you. It's really quite funny, and it's really contained. It's got a cool heist, and it's got a fun, like, everybody turns on each other kind of ending.
Yeah, it's like darkly funny still.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what they're trying to do and what ends up happening to them is it's the kind of movie where you're like, yes, the Coen brothers absolutely would want to make this movie. So I just thought you should see the good version of this movie. What'd you think about it?
I do think it's the good version of this movie. Absolutely. Alec Guinness does it is a really good character, and he almost underplays it, but that's that's kind of what he was, or what makes it so good, is that he's not really over the top with what he's doing, so that you can see him kind of flying under the radar, which would be a skill that he needs doing the job that he's doing, not draw so much attention to himself, where he can still be a little bit eccentric and a little bit, kind of funny and offbeat, but not be so like Tom Hanks in in the Coen version is just so over the top and like so eccentric. It's just like it's distracting.
Yeah,
almost.
He's like doing a Tim Burton character, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a really I mean, it's just a really strange choice, and it kind of distracts from everything else going on, whereas Alec Guinness kind of lets everything kind of more revolve around him, where he's kind of like the center of the movie and kind of lets everything kind of come to him in a much different way. And it was just funnier, and yeah, everything about it was just more fun. This is the good, and I can see why the Coens would make it. I'm just shocked that they did it so poorly, made everything so much worse.
The plot is straight out of something like Raising Arizona, right? It's that kind of like it's fast paced, it's funny, but there's a lot at stake, and someone's gonna die. And in the case of this movie, many someone's are gonna die. But even after it's hard to call them tragedies. You know what? It's much more like Burn After Reading than it is like.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't like Burn After Reading, but it is better than The Lady Killers.
Yeah. Burn After Reading is definitely better than Lady Killers. Yeah. And I've seen Lady Killers again recently, and it's still not very good. I mean, it hasn't aged well at all.
It was funny because it was kind of like the first chip in Tom Hanks's armor. He was sort of like Teflon for a while in the 90s and the early aughts. I mean, this was the early aughts, but after this, it was like, oh, is Tom Hanks good? Or does Tom Hanks get great scripts? Like, is Tom Hanks just like Spielberg's boy? In The Terminal, he's playing a character, he's doing an accent, but had he kept it at like and people don't love that movie. I like it quite a bit, but a lot of people don't.
I remember it being all right.
Had he played this character in The Lady Killers with this level of accent, it would have gone over much better. Now, I think he overdid it because Peter Sellers has the big fake teeth. Alec Guinness has the big fake teeth. And Hanks probably was like, okay, I'm going to do a whole thing. And it's Mississippi, and I'm crazy. Yeah. And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was like really over the top. And Shouldn't have done it. If you've seen Elvis, you're aware that Hanks falls into this. So that's, I don't know, the same thing happened. And
although, to be fair, the Coen brothers allowed it. I mean, they're the kind of directors who have a vision, and they're not going to, it's their movie, and they let it happen. So I blame them too.
Right. But even if non-Jew John Turturro could get away with the Southern accent in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and that joke only makes sense if you listen to last week's episode, then
still tormented.
They should have reeled in Tom Hanks and his absurd characterization. And everyone else in the movie is less good than they are in the British version of The Lady Killers. Well, it's almost unfair to compare. It's number like 13 on the BFI top 100 movies of all time. I don't agree with that. I think there's more than 13 British movies that are better than The Lady Killers, but I still highly recommend you check out this movie.
Yeah, and what's the who was the actor, the old woman in this version? Didn't even really talk about what it is about for those who haven't seen either version. It's a movie where some career criminals, they are planning a heist, and they need basically a safe house where they can do all their planning at, and get into their heisting basically, and their cover is that they're a band and they play like old big band records or something while they're supposedly practicing, just to kind of cover their tracks. And this old woman is supposedly none the wiser, but
Well, they use her too because she makes up stories about her neighbors all the time. She's kind of like the local crank. So the police are already used to not believing what she has to say.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a key. That's a bonus for them too. Yeah.
That plays into the amazing ending.
The ending is, I mean, the ending is so perfect. And she's really funny in it too. I mean, one thing the Coen Lady Killers did have is that the Irma P. Hall was very good, and I thought she was pretty funny. And the same is true for the woman here. I can't remember. I'm going to look up.
Her name's Katie Johnson, and she was a stage actress through the silent film era. And then when talkies started, she became a film actress in her older age. I mean, she didn't die she died when she was 78. So everyone looked much older back then than they look now. Right. But yeah, she's perfect for this movie, and she's very, 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 very funny.
She is, yeah. And when she discovers certain things, yeah, I mean, her reactions are really good and everything. Yeah, she's good. I really liked her in this a lot.
Right. And what's beautiful about the script is that it all builds to an ending that very much involves her and plays off everything that's happened up to that point. And in a screwball comedy like this, it is a dark comedy, but it's still very much like people are very exaggerated and big things are happening. You wouldn't expect, I wouldn't call it a cerebral ending, but it is a very satisfying tie it all together ending. It leaves you feeling very good about the movie you just watched.
Definitely. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. And you assigned me Marty.
I did.
So last week we talked about how Jake thought that John Turturro was Jewish, mostly because of the movie Quiz Show. I want to know, did you assign me this movie mostly because of the movie Quiz Show?
100% because of Quiz Show. Yes, I know. I love Quiz Show, and I know that you love Quiz Show. And for anybody who hasn't seen Quiz Show, there's a pretty big part of the movie that's based on John Turturro, the character he plays, and his love of the movie Marty, which was the Best Picture winner, the Oscar winner for Best Picture in 1955, and it stars Ernest Borgnine. And I think it's just it's a really great movie. It stars Ernest Borgnine is the title character, and I just thought with you being familiar with the title that it would just be one that you would really like, and it'd be one we'd certainly have a lot to say about.
I've been wanting to see this for a long time. So I used to get this and Harvey confused, and my father-in-law loves Harvey. And a few months ago we watched Harvey together, and I was bummed that I didn't like it as much as he did, and I was relieved that Marty was still out there for me to watch. And this to me was the first 5-star movie I'd watched in really some time. I really was totally taken by Ernest Borgnine's portrayal as kind of like a proto incel with a heart of gold, though, who's
right, a good incel.
Yeah, he's not mad at women for not liking him, but he's ready to admit that he's been hurt over and over again because he's fat, and because he's ugly, and because he works at a butcher shop, which isn't a respectable job. And it's wonderful. And then the way that it's just like a perfect little romance. It reminded me a lot of Before Sunrise. Most of it takes place during a night. He meets this woman who's been stood up by a kind of a scummy guy. His mom begs him to go to this dance club that he's been to 100 times before and been rejected at 100 times before. We see him go just to appease his mom. He gets rejected again. And then this guy approaches him and asks him to take his date home because he wants to go get laid with a sexier lady. And Marty's so offended by this, he won't do it. But he sees the guy who does agree to do it fail. And then he goes and meets this girl on the rooftop, and they have a really sweet night together. And what I love most about this movie is it shows that these people didn't throughout in the beginning of the movie, you think everyone just wants Marty to get married, but they don't want Marty to get married. They just want Marty to be a specific thing for them when they need it, because he always has been. And the rest of the movie is really about, and it happens rather quickly, like him finding the courage to do what he wants for himself.
Mm-hmm. Well, because they all say they want him to meet somebody, like, oh, you need to get married. When are you going to get married, Marty? And then like said, it's immediate. He only spends one night with this girl, but they're already like, oh, you shouldn't be with this girl. You shouldn't be hanging out with this girl. They're already like trying to dissuade him from, calling her or going out with her again. It's like, it's almost cruel.
It is
the way
cruel.
They treat him. I mean, it is cruel, actually.
Yeah. And they all have their own reasons for it too. Like some of them, she's not so pretty, so they don't want to be seen with a not pretty girl. The mother is worried. She hasn't thought about now. And so this movie also has a lot in common with Moonstruck. There's a whole subplot with Marty's mother and Marty's aunt. The aunt is getting kicked out of her home because she and Marty's cousins don't get along. They're newlywed. She's too involved in their lives. And Marty's mother sees all the problems that come with when your son gets married and he won't be able to take care of her. And maybe he wants to sell the family house. And she's not selfish. She's a good character, but she's never thought about what Marty getting married would actually mean, aside from people would stop bothering her about Marty not being married. And that reminded me a lot of the Olympia Dukakis stuff in Moonstruck.
Yeah.
Which is another great movie.
Excellent. Yeah, very good.
And then, his friends are just jerks. His friends just suck.
They're just jerks. Like every one time he runs into one of them, it's like, I'm just walking away from like, why is he friends with these guys?
Yeah.
They're just the neighborhood guys, I guess,
Exactly right. And they, what I like about it too, is as the movie goes on, they keep introducing more of them and we never learn anything about them.
No.
They're just like more and more awful guys who have trivial things to say. They're all quite different from each other, but they're all really boring. And Marty is really sweet and interesting, and he's afraid to talk. And another thing I loved about the movie was how much he comes out of his shell with Clara. When he's on a date with Clara, he doesn't talk much around his friends, but when he's with Clara, he can't stop talking. And you can see it. First off, was she nominated for anything? Was Betsy Blair nominated for anything?
She might have been.
Her performance is so subtle and so great. You can see, like, she doesn't really know how to deal with how Marty is, but she might not know how to deal with men in general, but she thinks it's sweet that he's so excited to be around her because no one's ever excited to be around her.
Yeah, I think it's more that she's just not used to someone, with that kind of enthusiasm, because she's kind of portray her, as a little bit like him, where she's, kind of been, rejected a lot and maybe passed over a lot. And I think she's just maybe not used to the attention. And Marty, like I said, he's not used to, he says it like 2 or 3 times, like, oh my gosh, I can't stop talking. I'm usually not like this. I can't shut my mouth, and he's all like excited about it. And it's so just adorable.
She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
Yep.
Really happy about that.
And, Joe Mantel. Oh yeah, the friend too. His guy friend.
Okay, if ever an actor got nominated for a role that he didn't deserve an Oscar nomination for, it's Joe Mantel. I mean, he's not bad, but it's just like not an important role in the movie.
Not so much.
But Borgnine's great. He won the Oscar for this film, and Delbert Mann won also. Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. I saw someone, I'll just sum it all up by saying I once saw someone on YouTube. She was going through every single Best Picture winner, and she was very dismissive of a lot of the early ones, as most people are. A lot of them aren't good. A lot of the new ones are good.
Yeah.
Green Book won Best Picture.
It's a mixed bag, but you know what though? Does anybody even remember Green Book?
No, I don't remember it.
Yeah, like nobody even talks about it anymore.
It's bizarre. When she got to Marty, she was like, "This is a movie about an incel with a heart of gold ending up with a femcel with a heart of gold," and I was like, "Yeah, that's about it." But if you like movies like Moonstruck, Before Sunrise, where movies about innocent, even like Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, movies about people who are good but are having trouble finding their people, and then they find their people. That's all this is, and it's really worth checking out. Yeah,
I was trying to think of some other good examples like that of just nice people just finding each other and falling for each other and just having their own little bubble to be in. It's really beautiful. And Borgnine is he's so good in this. And we're gonna talk whenever we get to 1953, we'll talk about the opposite side of Ernest Borgnine in From Here to Eternity, and it's a whole different Ernest Borgnine.
I think that's the only decade where we haven't hit the 3-year yet.
Is it? That's an interesting statistic. We haven't done 93 yet because we haven't touched Schindler's List yet.
Oh boy, chick. The newer version of this movie that I think is worth checking out. I didn't love it, but it's cool. It's very stylistically cool. Is Rye Lane, which I think is still on Hulu. Yeah, I did. I liked that too. I thought it was very good. What else? No, it's just great. I mean, Marty is and it's short too. It's like 90 minutes. It's just like it's just a delight. Yeah, hard not to smile by the end of that movie. You feel bad for Marty through part of it, but then by the end, it's you'll just feel great afterwards. At least I do. So I definitely don't have enough to do like a top anything. Oh, yeah. But I will just say other great movies from 1955 worth checking out. Lady and the Tramp, pretty good. Oh yeah. To Catch a Thief is, I would say, like good, not great Hitchcock, and Rafifi as another like great heist. Rafifi and The Lady Killers would make for a really cool double feature. Like all those two. Oh wow, I have not very many from 1955 as well. I've got Marty would probably be the best, and then Lady Killers, which we talked about as well. And then I also have Lady and the Tramp and Rafifi on my list. I don't have star ratings on them, so it's been a while since I've seen them. It was a big year for James Dean too. Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden both came out in 1955. Oh yeah. And The 7-Year Itch. I haven't seen any of those movies, but Wilder, got to check out 7-Year Itch soon. Okay, so that's it for 1955. We'll be back next week. We're coming back to the present with 2022. last year with some really weird stuff. If you want to know what is coming out next week, go to our Letterboxd profile. You can find me at Brad Garoon on Letterboxd. I think, Jake, you're Jake Ziegler on Letterboxd.
Yep, it's Jake_Ziegler.
And both of us have pinned to our profiles our Never Did It podcast list. You could also just search for the Never Did It podcast list. And the 2 movies that will be discussed on next week's episode are always at the top of that list. So check that out. And thank you for joining us for Never Did It.